Okay, so I say with all love and warmth that part of the concern also for people who are progressive thinking and liberal-minded, or just progressive thinking in terms of just fix it, is that we all have these posters in our closet that is attached to a stick that we sometimes will cart out when we're talking about criminal justice policy and those statistics that you first heard when we opened it up, incarceration. And we run around with these signs, build more schools, less jails. Build more schools, less jails. And we walk around everywhere, build more schools, we protest, build more schools, less jails. Put money into education, not prisons. There's a fundamental problem with that approach, in my opinion. And it's this. I agree with that conceptually, but you have not addressed the reason I have 3 padlocks on my front door.
I know that there are protests still happening in major cities across the United States. I'm just not seeing the reporting on it that I had for the first few weeks.
That's right. But they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. And this is a movement, I'm telling you. They're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that they're not going to let up, and they should not. And we should not.
Talk to me about the Defund the Police movement, and what do you think is the first piece of legislation that should happen towards reforming the police?
So at its essence, Andy, it really, I believe, is about reimagining public safety and how we achieve it. You know, for far too long, the status quo thinking has been to believe that by putting more police on the street, you're going to have more safety. And that's just wrong. It's just, that's not how it works.
Trying to look, part of this movement, and it's not just a moment, it's a movement, standing on the shoulders of the movements before. Part of this has to be about changing the system, rehauling the system, upending the system. And so that piece of it, you're right. Under this Attorney General, I have no hope for it being implemented. But God willing, he will be out of that office shortly. And then we need to have a requirement that that office do the right thing going forward.
So then if you're for overhauling, where do you stand on defund the police?
Look, right. So here's the thing. Defund the police. The issue behind it is that we need to reimagine how we are creating safety. And when you have many cities that have 1/3 of their entire city budget focused on policing, we know that is not the smart way and the best way or the right way to achieve safety. For too long, the status quo thinking has been, you get more safety by putting more cops on the street. Well, that's wrong. This is an important conversation, and not just a conversation, because to your earlier point, can't just be about talk. It has to be about forcing change. And this is why, I was out there with folks any movement, any progress we have gained has been because people took to the streets. We can fight and be optimistic. In fact, some of our best fights have been born out of optimism, right? Born out of knowing what can be, unburdened by what has been. And that's what we have to carry to keep us going, because we don't want this to just be a moment. We do want this to be a movement. And by the way, Black Lives Matter has changed the environment in such a substantial and beautiful way. Their activism has allowed people who are inside the system who want to change it to not be alone in trying to change it.
I'm glad you brought that up.
That's great.
But that's real.
When I talk to law enforcement, they know that they don't want to be, nor are they skilled to be the ones who are responding to someone with mental illness or substance abuse or the homeless population. But in many cities, that's what's happening, because we are not directing those resources, those public resources, to where they need to go, which is addressing mental health, homelessness, substance abuse, so that we don't have to have a police response, because we are smarter.
Senator, I hear you loud and clear, and I don't think there's any rational American right now who doesn't think that we need to take a cold, hard look at reforming our police. But there was a video that went viral over the weekend of the mayor of Minneapolis being yelled at, saying, yes or no question, are you for defunding the police? So I'm going to ask the same question the protesters asked him. Are you for defunding the police?
How are you defining defund the police?
Well, I'm not for anything remotely for that, so I would ask the protesters the same thing. But I assume and again, this is something that is new to me, I assume it's removing police, and as Congresswoman Ilhan Omar said, bringing in a whole new way of governing and a law and order into a community. And my understanding, again, this is something that has just come into my understanding recently, is that you would not have police officers like this Minneapolis City Councilwoman said, that I would be a place of privilege if someone broke into my home and I wanted to call the police.
So, again, we need to reimagine how we are achieving public safety in America. And to have cities where 1/3 of their entire budget is going to policing, but yet there is a dire need in those same cities for mental health resources, for resources going into public schools, resources going into job training and job creation. Come on, we have to be honest about this, that there is actually not a consensus around this, because if there were, we would actually see smarter distribution of resources in our country. To address the issues.
Let's speak another truth. And this room knows it all too well. In our country, there are parents who every day have to sit down with their child when that child turns 12 years old to have what we call the talk, wherein they must explain, son, you may be stopped, you may be arrested, you may be chased, you may be shot because of the color of your skin. Let's speak truth. We have a criminal justice system in this country that is deeply flawed, infected with bias, and in need of reform. 65 years since Emmett Till. 52 years since 3 young black men were killed at the Algiers Motel. And 7 years since Trayvon Martin. This is still everyday life for young black people in America. Let's speak that truth, that it is intolerable and it has got to end.
I'm running to fight for an America where no mother or father has to teach their young son that people may stop him, arrest him, chase him, or kill him because of his race.
I want black people to stop getting killed.
When you just break it down, everybody agrees. You know, although I'll tell you a little story, I've got 5 minutes. 1 year, it was many years ago, I was speaking before the San Francisco Democratic Party, the annual meeting. And it was a Saturday, I'd done a bunch of events, so I got there and I was a little tired. And I got to the podium and I looked out at the San Francisco Democratic Party. And I just stood at this podium, I kind of leaned over, I was just exhausted, and I'm looking at, you know, the glorious party that it is, right? So it's like the black guy with the blonde hair, the white guy with the dreadlocks, you know, the lady there with the purple hair and all the buttons, right? And I just looked at it, this fabulous motley crew, and I said, okay, so who of us as Democrats, raise your hand, is saying people shouldn't have to go to jail? And you could see these hands just start to run up. And I said, hold on. One human being kills another human being. A woman is raped. A child is molested. Is that what we're saying? So the knee-jerk response was to suggest we don't want law enforcement and public safety. But that's not what we mean. So that has to be part of what we talk about in challenging ourselves in terms of where we're coming from when we talk about what needs to occur.